Today's episode of the Athletic Mind Unleashed is connecting two very different sides of the world. I'm in Estonia, North Europe, and Michael here is in California. So for him, it's like 6 a.m. I'm very pleased that he decided to wake up for the pod to start the day early and start the day by inspiring other people to do something special with their lives. Because he is someone who has done a lot of special things with his life, and I'm also quite amazed how he has been doing a lot of adventure racing, a lot of traveling. He has been in the deep jungles of Borneo. He has been in Guatemala, I think the highlands, even gone to Kenya, which is the place where, most marathon runners would go. And as a former marathon runner myself, it's like, okay, yeah, this is like the Mecca. This is the place to go. And he has been doing all these cool, crazy things. I think that the first thing that I want to ask from him is, okay, what has inspired you to go on all these adventures in your life? Because there have been many. I also read that you're like scuba diver, and also I think you were instructor as well, and mountaineer and everything. It's so many active things and very cool stuff that I wouldn't even think of. So how do these ideas
Come to me?
come to me? Yeah.
Well, I guess the easiest way to answer that is a story that my mom used to tell when I was a real little kid. I mean, a little kid. And back in the days when parents allowed their kids to be feral, she would tell these stories about me just walking out the back door, disappearing into the fields for hours. And, I would be just this little kid just wandering the fields and hills and just exploring. I'd always come back with some silly little treasure, right? Some old hat or some old tool that I found. Frankly, I've just been doing that ever since.
Wow. So you have always been very curious about all these things.
Well, that helps. Yeah, I seem to have a knack, and I'm curious about other cultures. And I seem to have a knack for, when I travel, to be able to connect with people. I have many faults, but that's a skill that I seem to have cultivated, is because I'm curious about people, and I like talking to them and finding out about their lives and their points of view and interesting aspects about their culture.
The travels have also taken you to very different kind of places. It's like Kenya, Guatemala, then we have Mexico, and then we have all these places all over the world. So how do you even pick the next place where to go?
There's sort of a list in my head. I just past October was in Cambodia and Vietnam. Cambodia has been on the list for a long time because of all the Khmer ruins like Angkor Wat and the rest. This October, I'm going to go to Morocco. So it's just places that I look on a map and what interests me. And Morocco just seems like a pretty cool place to go. You got the Sahara Desert, you got the Atlas Mountains, you have a rich, deep cultural aspect to it. So that's the next spot. Before we go too far, you were talking about Kenya. I actually met in Kenya on my last trip, Kip Keino.
Oh,
A famous marathoner.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think in Kenya it's very easy to meet all these people who hold records, European records, whatever, like not European, but very fast because they're just around.
Oh, yeah. And he was a nice man. He was still training the Kenyan runners who were just world famous marathoners. So it was quite a treat to sit down with them and share a beverage.
Yeah, so how does it feel like just meet these people who are doing so amazing things?
It's inspiring, for one. You read about these people in history books, and he's just world famous for really bringing marathons on the map, and especially the African runners who are just so skilled and talented. Then you meet people that are not, for me, mostly it's not famous people. When I was in Cambodia, I took a trek into the jungle, and we hired some local tribal guides, and those guys were fascinating. The way they can move through the jungle, the things that they saw as we were going through. They would show me a tree and then scrape off some bark and say, okay, we use this as a medicine for this. Find some leaves and they'll say, well, if you crumple these up and put them on a wound, they act as a coagulant, they'll stop the bleeding. As they're going through the forest, they're looking around and they see so much. I'm just seeing green trees and high humidity, but they're seeing just this pharmacy, they're seeing, just this wildlife and the deep history that their tribe has been there forever. The one downside was I'm about 6 foot, they're about 5 foot. So as they're clearing their way through the jungle, he's clearing it for somebody 5 foot. So I gotta bend down.
Yeah. You get like a lot of back pain after the jungle.
Yeah, but those guys, the bushcraft was amazing. And we actually left our jungle camp on a river on a bamboo raft that one of the guides just fashioned from scratch. Went into the jungle, cut down the bamboo, put the logs together, used bamboo for lashings, and in about an hour, he had a sturdy raft that took four of us out through the river, even through a little bit of rapids. And so that was fun. That was interesting to
Wow.
see
And
how he
like you
could put
said,
that together.
these are not people that you know about already. You would never know about them if you actually didn't go to their place, if you didn't actually travel. You need to travel to see all this.
You need to travel, you need to put yourself out there. By and large, most people in the world are pretty friendly. They're pretty cool people. And if you're cool with them, they'll open up. One of my favorite memories from Cambodia is there was one night, it was during a Cambodian festival, and our guide was talking to a local guide that was working with us, and we got to talking, and instead of just passing us off as another tourist, she actually invited us to her family home. Eventually that night, we go up and the houses are built on stilts made of wood, and we got invited up and the whole family was in there just celebrating, and they just invited us to sit down and celebrate with them. Yeah, that was a pretty cool experience.
Has anything dangerous ever happened to you as well during all these travels?
Well, there's always an element of risk in whatever you do. The short answer is yes. It kind of depends on what you're doing. You know, when you're traveling, you got known risks of getting ill or getting hurt, or there's always crime at some places. But I've actually found the farther away I've got from cities, the less crime there is, the more safe I feel. So,
Wow. So this also means that usually you maybe don't go to the cities that much, but you focus more on nature.
oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm not a city guy. The only
Mountains,
reason why I'm in,
yeah.
yeah,
Jungle.
the only reason why I'm in a city is because that's where the airport is.
Very often the airport is also like somewhere in the middle of nowhere, not in the actual
Mhm.
city. I also know that you have done like a lot of races. So what put you into this competitive sport in the first place?
Well, I started out with triathlons, and it was funny because I found I wasn't particularly good at the traditional American sports of baseball and football. I played those, but wasn't particularly good. Wasn't particularly bad. But I found that I was a good all-rounder, and so triathlons came, and I was not the fastest cyclist, but I was a good cyclist. Not the fastest runner, but I was a good runner. So I put those together and raced, and then I saw a program covering the Eco Challenge. I just fell in love with that and then completely changed, started adventure racing. After a number of years, worked my way up and actually raced the Eco Challenge in Borneo
So what
and
does it
finished
mean, the
there.
Eco Challenge?
Eco Challenge is a multi-day race. It's usually about 10 to 12 days, nonstop, in some wilderness area. Here it was Borneo, so we were going through the jungles of Borneo and paddling in the ocean on the coast. Like I say, it's nonstop. You, as a team, decide if and when you sleep. You have to navigate by map and compass, and there are checkpoints. You travel in various modes. It's all human powered. You hike, run, you kayak or paddle, mountain bike. There's mountaineering sections. This one had a few swimming sessions, and you're carrying everything you need on your back and your team going through these areas. So
Wow, so this
it's
is like team sport because previously you said you were doing triathlon, which is I think that was like individual sport. So you weren't good
right.
at these team sports like baseball and football. Then you switched to triathlon, doing it like solo, I assume, and then you went into adventures with. So it's also like switching a little bit.
It's a different dynamic, especially when you're in a stressful race like the adventure racing, because it's meant to be stressful on the team. And in fact, the hard part of the race is more the mental aspect of keeping it together for that long a time and team dynamics. In fact, a lot of the race directors design the race to really cause stress on the team. So you have to have really good team cohesion. You have to have the ability to not get on each other's nerves, work together. It's a real mental game.
Wow. So
The physical
you
part gets you.
How do you manage with
Yeah.
all these days with other people? Do you practice for this? Like how to get along? Do you have like any plan? Okay, what to do in the conflict situation?
It's good if you have a plan with the conflict situation, but probably those plans disappear once the race starts. You just have to work together. We trained a lot where we did a lot of lesser known races, and so it wasn't our first race together. We had raced together, the team that eventually I was with at the Eco Challenge. We had raced together for 3 years, I think, and so we knew each other pretty well. Worked out all the rough spots, but still, even at that race, there were moments of inter-team tension. But you have to work through those. We did, and we were able to finish.
So do you still communicate with these people who were part of your team?
Not anymore. It's been a long time. We did a few races after, and then we all kind of went our separate ways.
But are you from the same area, or was the team also compiled from like people from all over the world?
Well, it was all over the U.S., and how the team came together was through different races. We'd be on different teams, and you get to know people who continually do this. You know, the team you may be on, there may be, you know, some people that are not as interested or as good, and then what it kind of filters out to where people seek each other out in races. Hey, you know, you were really strong. Yeah, you were too. Hey, why don't we get together, put together a team? And so it kind of self filters out to put together a team. So it's not like you're really close friends. You just met through the racing circuit and decided to race together.
So it's also like a separate community of all these people who are. I remember when I was still running, it was also like the races were not just the race; it was also about coming together as people. So I guess it's
Oh yeah,
same for you.
definitely. Especially, you know, Spartan racing when I got into it, even though that's an individual sport challenge, there's a lot of community in that. I had a couple of good friends, and we would just go to all of these races together. The Spartan people put a really good pre and post race camp, festival, whatever you want to call it, together, so that you can still bond and swap lies about how great you were on the course. The imagination is much better. I'm sure I did that obstacle much better than the film shows. There would be times after the race, I'm sure you had after you finished the marathon, you just don't want to go home. You
Yeah,
want
yeah.
you sit around or stand around, you rehydrate, and you're talking to people and you're yakking it up. And hey, what race did you do?
That's true. For
It's
me, it was
almost,
about the
yeah.
community. And I was also like running sometimes like abroad. So it was already like a full trip going with a group of friends. And we made it into a full trip. So maybe we went there, we did the marathon, and then we had a few more days for sightseeing. You don't want to get too tired before the marathon, but afterwards, it doesn't matter anyway. Your body is hurting, but it doesn't matter. You just go and see all the sights and maybe go on a hike as well if you have any energy left. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's that shared experience of the difficulty of doing a marathon. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. That's a lot of miles. But having gone through that crucible, all of you have that shared experience. And so that gives you sort of a badge of honor and an entree into the community that you all share that, yeah, we were able to do this.
Like even when running is individual sport, you can still share the experience and you can still talk about it and you can bond over the pain and the difficulties and also your on your personal bests. There are so many different options what to bond over, and I really miss that
Mhm.
part of the running actually, maybe even more than the pain on the road and the races, but just the community part.
Oh, definitely. You realize that you're with people who have the same view that you do. You value fitness, you value the discipline it took to train. So you all have a lot of the same shared values too, and it's reaffirming. Most people say, yeah, I just ran 26 miles and go, what are you, crazy? But your friends who are marathoners would go, good, how'd you do it? What was your time? So
People
you
wouldn't
have that
stand
good
like
positive.
why you're doing it and how hard it is on the body and all things that like come with it. I think this is especially crucial during the preparation phase when you're still training, because most people who are not doing it, they don't understand why do you need to go, well, why do you have to run early in the morning, why do you have to do that, and why can't you just chill out and take it easy. I'm like, no, I want to be serious about my training. It's people who are not in this circle, for them it's much harder to understand. And you were doing something like completely different. little bit even like extreme. So how did people resonate with it? Whether like understanding or rather not?
They kind of knew I did these crazy things. I used to respond to their questions like, why do you do it? And I'd just say, well, I'm just brain damaged. They'd get a nervous chuckle, and it's kind of hard to explain why you do it. Now I think I've come to realize a little bit more that for folks like you and me who do these extreme things, they're meaningful experiences in a different way. I think they make us deeper individuals in a sense, because you had to have that discipline. You had to put yourself through a certain very difficult crucible of pain and suffering and risk of failure, risk of injury. But all of that, I think, gives those experiences a little spice, a little deeper meaning that we can take away and builds our character.
Yeah,
Whatever it is, bodybuilding, marathoning, Spartan races, anything that would take risk and effort that requires us to really push the boundaries.
yeah.
I think it's not, I mean, they're fun to do, but I think what really draws us back is, I think they're just deep, meaningful experiences for us.
Yeah.
I really didn't realize that till long into my career. You know, on my podcast, Whiskey and a Map, I interview a lot of adventurers, explorers. And as I always ask them why and what motivates them. It just kept resonating that it wasn't just peak bagging. Oh, I got this peak and I got that peak. You could just tell that the whole process gave them a very meaningful experience, and they came away with just more. They were just more themselves and much better for having done that. I hope that makes sense. It's
Yeah,
just
it
something
does,
that
because
realized.
I completely agree with this. Because the reason why I was doing marathons, it was the journey and being in a community and doing it like every day, not just the one day when you run the race. And when I switched to bodybuilding, I also wanted to do something that was harder, that was more strict, and I wanted to grow as a person. So the whole bodybuilding journey was also like a way to become a better version of myself, because I knew that it will be mentally tougher. It's physically like it's different kind of tough, but it's, you know, as a runner you can eat all you want, but in bodybuilding this is more strict and you will have to face hunger for many months during the diet phase. So I wanted to know how it feels like, what it feels like, and that's why I did it. I would say it's like, if I can do this, I can possibly do anything. I think that's what many people who have been in sports are also realizing, that the mental toughness that you gain and the journey that you are on, these are like the highlights.
Oh, definitely. And especially think about bodybuilding. You are actually, through discipline, motivation, because you're doing workouts when nobody's watching. You have to be disciplined, but you're actually working on making yourself a better version of what you want to be directly. And that's so empowering to you, so significant to you, that if you can do this to yourself this way, you can do it in any other way. And so it just gives you these mental tools and capacity. Maybe that's it. Maybe it gives you that capacity to always make yourself a better version of who you are.
Yeah.
However you view that.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And for example, 3 days ago, I once again did something crazy. I was in Barcelona for 1 week. So in a warmer place in Estonia, right now we have snow, but I was in Barcelona. And 3 days ago, I just woke up early in the morning. Okay, it was planned. And I walked 100,000 steps just to do it. I had done it before once in September, but I was like, okay, I kind of need to remember how much my body can do and achieve. Walked basically the whole day, and now it's done. Once the mental chatter stopped, I got to so many beautiful insights about what I really want from life. So actually putting yourself to these extreme situations and testing your body's limits can have an effect on your mind. Would you agree with something like
Yeah.
this?
Oh, absolutely. Isn't that fascinating, though, that as you work and stress your body in some physical capacity, it does seem to clarify your mind. Your brain seems to really enjoy the fact that the body is suffering.
Quietly laughing at you, it's like you're suffering, body.
Yeah, you know, the mind and body, I think, are so much more connected than we give credit for. They may not be as separate as we grew up thinking.
Yeah. For example, this time I didn't listen to any podcasts. When I did it first in September, I was listening to podcasts the whole day, kind of brainwashing myself with some kind of motivational stuff as well. Sometimes I want to listen to podcasts just to program my mind to think in a certain way. But this time it was just like, okay, I'm gonna go in the quiet. Of course, because it was close to Barcelona, I was walking by the seaside. There are like people, noise, everything, but I was taking it all in. And in the end, when it was already like 9 p.m., 10 p.m., the beach bars are open, people are out having fun. I was very much in my own zone. It was okay, the last 10,000 steps. I was completely tuned out of all the people, and I was very deep inside myself. So it was also like very different experience, and I really loved to do this.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of not plugging in and having music or anything when you're doing hard training. The reason is that when you start hitting your physical limit, when it starts getting hard, that little voice in your head said, well, why don't you back off a little bit, or maybe just do 5 miles, let's not do the whole 10. You have a little voice that's always telling you to back off or what have you, that you have to overcome. You have to train yourself to ignore that voice. Now there's another voice that's when you really do hit the limit that you need to pay attention to. But that initial voice that says, why don't you take it easy, there's a bar over there, it looks pretty fun, that beer looks pretty tasty, I'm thirsty. Because that's going to happen when you race, when you compete. And if you don't ignore and quiet that voice and turn it into a positive voice, I think you need to train that as much as your cardiovascular system and your muscles. You need to train your mind to be able to persevere. I think if you plug in too much, you drown out that voice and it's sort of artificial. And you miss that training opportunity, maybe to your own detriment, because if you've always run with music or motivation in your ears and you don't in the marathon, all of a sudden you're hitting that point where it gets really tough and that voice is chattering to you. You may be, if you haven't practiced, just ignoring it.
Usually during races, I was never listening to anything, maybe only in the early times when I was still slower. But I didn't want to have any extra stuff on me either, because, with every little thing, it starts to get annoying. I only wanted to have the watch and maybe some energy gels somewhere in the pocket, but as convenient and comfortable as possible. I never even carried a bottle because I can't have something around me or something in my hand. This is annoying. Of course, if it's a race, there are always the drinking stations where you can get the food and the water and everything. So I never wanted to have like headphones. I would also have to have like some kind of device. I just can't have it.
Yeah, then you miss the experience of the whole situation, the sights, the sounds.
And I would say that for me, it would also be like every tiny detail starts limiting me because it gets hard. And then if something small is out of place, it gets super annoying over time. Every minute it's like, oh my God, I can't handle it anymore. Kind of hard.
Oh yeah, that's a little tiny cent of grain in the shoe that all of a sudden becomes a
Oh.
boulder by the end of the race.
Yeah, it's gonna be like a lot of blisters in the end. Yeah. So you have done so many very long kind of races. How did the body manage all this? Did you get any injuries from any of the races?
Oh yeah, my left knee reminds me of the Spartan Championships out of Tahoe a few years ago. I don't know when I did it, but somewhere along the line, I did something to my left knee. The race there in Tahoe is a very hard race. It's like 18, 19 miles of Spartan racing up and down this really rugged mountains. Broke an ankle in another Spartan race and stupidly finished the race with it. It wasn't a through and through, but that still reminds me that, yeah, I probably should have just not finished the race. Got to the
Wow.
podium, but that was not very smart.
Okay.
I still have scars from some of the leech bites from Borneo to remind me how fun that was. Those leeches were just miserable. That's the risk. I mean, if you didn't have the risk of some kind of physical issue, injuries, humidity, high altitude, cold, heat, the risk gives it that adventure. That makes it all that much more interesting and fulfilling when you actually finish, because you did put yourself out there. If you didn't want risks, then you'd be sitting on the deck of some cruise ship drinking margaritas. Might be okay in some circumstances, but it's a different kind of experience. Risk, I think that it's the risk that really adds that quality to these experiences.
So you went to
Every
the.
explorer that I've
Okay. Sorry. Continue.
I was just going to talk about risk management. Almost to a person, every explorer that I've interviewed, their primary focus is risk management. They anticipate problems are going to happen, just not know problems are going to happen, or can happen. They know problems will happen. And so they go in there with that mindset. And with that mindset, they manage the risks. If this happens, what's the consequence? They really work hard to mitigate the risk, because in their world, death is a possible outcome. And so they're very attentive to risk management. You and I, when we do our competitions, we engage in that too. There's some risk management, such as properly training, being hydrated, make sure you have the right equipment, your energy gels. You gain this experience to know what to do to manage yourself, to minimize those risks in order to accomplish the goal.
So, having done all these races, has it also made you immune to death or less afraid? Or maybe you were never afraid of death. How has your
Oh,
relationship with
no.
death evolved?
No, probably the opposite is that you become much more aware of how fragile you can be. You know that things do happen, people do die. I interviewed Jill Heinert not too long ago. She's one of the world's foremost cave divers. She says she's seen about 100 of her friends die over the years in cave diving accidents. Cave diving is pretty extreme. People do get injured, do get hurt. I think you appreciate life more. Yeah, you don't take it for granted as much. When you see people get hurt or injured or, God forbid, pass away from something, it's not that you are not afraid. You recognize that it happens. It comes to everybody eventually. You learn from the mistakes, you learn from it, and you just try and live just a little bit nicer, because you're only here for a while.
So, it makes you appreciate life more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even from the simplest things. When I travel to a lot of backcountry places, water is always a big issue about water quality. And so every time I come back home, I'm so amazed that I could turn on the faucet and actually drink the water that comes out without any threat of disease. So it's simple things that we take for granted that you learn that.
Yeah. Sometimes I also think
It's
about,
different.
I think about the marathons and the way we are racing as runners, me personally. It's almost like an artificial situation. It's like you had a drinking station. It is also comfortable. The first person who ever ran a marathon in Greece, he died. He didn't have drinking stations and support and music on the way and whatever. He just ran, and we have this privilege to have drinking stations, comfortable clothes, proper running shoes, and everything.
Yeah, but don't underestimate that. It allows a lot of people to be able to do that experience. If
True.
it was
Yeah.
unaided, there'd be a lot fewer people who do it. It'd be a lot slower because you have to hydrate properly, so you have to carry your water. There are people who just put their shoes on and they'll just go out the front door and come back 13 miles, 26 miles later, self-supporting. So they'll have that experience too.
Yeah. When it was not so hot weather and I had a long run, I could have been that person as well. Like 30 miles, yeah. I could, if it's not like super hot summer, I would just go and run for 2 hours without drinking anything and then just come back. I'm like, I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could run 2 hours in the heat without
Not
having to
really like super,
dehydrate.
like a normal spring weather. Not very summer heat. I would just take a little bit of money with me and also plan having a small shop on the route, so I can just buy a bottle, empty it, and just continue because I don't want to carry stuff.
But think about the fact that probably when you first started running, you probably didn't even dream you'd be able to do that, right? That just
I
would
didn't
seem so
even
far away,
know
but
that I can.
yeah.
I didn't even have any idea this kind of life exists. So I didn't have like any imaginations and any dreams related to running and doing that kind of stuff. It wasn't even like even in my reality. So yeah,
Yeah, and see how far you've come just by incrementally training both
true.
your mind and body. Now, 2 hours in the heat with no water, just
Not
another thing
now.
to
Now
learn.
I'm more into bodybuilding, so I'm not used to this anymore. But I think if I focused on running, it would be possible. Yeah. But anyway, I
Yeah.
also wanted to ask about your life in general, like little bit. So if you like used to take all these risks during races, does it mean that your normal life is risk free, or do you also have any risk involved in your regular daily life?
No, I don't go looking for high risk in my day-to-day life. There's enough out there. There's different kinds of risks. You and I are both podcasters, so we go on the camera like this. And so I suppose there's a risk of not looking good, making a fool of yourself. All the things that people will talk themselves out of putting themselves out there to do something. So I suppose it's a different kind of risk of yourself. You still have to put yourself out and get out there and do things like this. I guess maybe I hadn't thought about it, but maybe that does encourage me to put myself into different challenging situations socially or what have you in my normal life. I don't know. Did you find that maybe happened to you too?
I think for me, being here, this feels comfortable. I have been doing it enough to feel comfortable. I've also studied coaching, so I had to talk to random strangers on camera quite a lot just to practice. Of course, in the beginning, it was more like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing? But, it's if you have been doing something that we have, like running marathons, having adventures in the jungle, all these things like appearing on the camera, from the warmth and comfort of your own home where the water is running and everything. This feels like easier almost.
Oh, yeah. By broadening your character or doing the hard physical stuff or mental stuff, this stuff becomes easier. In
Yeah.
fact, you probably have had the same experience that I have when I come back and you see somebody who's complaining that at some coffee shop that their Starbucks coffee or whatever you have didn't have the right amount of chocolate sprinkles on it or something really silly, but they're all bent out of shape because the coffee isn't perfect. And you're looking at them going, this is the thing that puts you off center? There's a lot of things that are worse than not having your coffee properly chocolated.
So true. And one thing that people keep telling about me is also that I never complain. And I'm like, I don't, because, okay, maybe I don't like all the things happening around me, but I don't spend time complaining and whining. I just take action or just do something else. Because I think life is too short to just focus on the negative. It's like you just do something else or change the thing that you want to be complaining about.
Right, and that's where your bodybuilding discipline comes in. It's that, okay, I can complain about it, but why? It's a waste of time. Work the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Make it better, do what I can.
Complaining
Yeah,
doesn't make anything
it's all this.
better. Yeah, it
No.
only makes
Yeah, if you walked into the gym and it was particularly crowded, you can get put off, but otherwise you're going to go, no, I've got my routine I got to do today, and you work it out and get it done.
yeah. There's
And that's
always
what
like
separates.
you can always work around it and find the other machines, other replace exercises or whatever. There's always a way, but if you believe there is a way, there is a way, and if you believe there is not, there is not. It's all about the mindset again.
Oh, absolutely. And think about the mindset that you've acquired by doing these hard things. The marathoning and bodybuilding takes a lot of work in the gym, outside the gym, and with that mental capacity for discipline and consistency. And that pays off everywhere. It gets into all aspects of your life.
Yeah, that's why I'm talking about athletic mindset and how these tools can help anybody. It's like the resilience that you get just by doing something hard. I'm not saying that everybody has to become an athlete, but just doing something out of your ordinary, just going through some challenges that you choose, this can make you so much stronger in so many ways.
Oh, in order to be resilient, you have to work yourself to be resilient. There's a story that NASA here, the space agency, did this experiment, wanted to see enclosed environment that they could send to some other planet, right? So they had this big dome and they grew trees and stuff inside, tried this environment. What they found is the trees would grow up and then just simply fall over. And they were puzzled by it until the arborist, tree person said, well, the thing is the tree needs the wind to make it stronger. And when that wind comes, it sets down its roots much more deeply and firmly into the soil. And without it, it grew up and just toppled over. So I always thought that was a pretty good metaphor for, if you don't have that adversity, you don't set down those really solid, good roots in your character, and then you'll just topple over at the slightest wind.
Yeah, it's like every training is the signal to the body that it has to get stronger because the next workout can even be harder. And if you don't give the signal to your body that this workout is hard, it doesn't know that it has to get stronger. that we are destroying ourselves tiny bit with every workout that we do.
But the body responds by getting stronger, rebuilds a little bit stronger.
True. So you mentioned a podcast. So this is one way how people can find you and how they can like know more about you, right?
Yeah, my podcast is called Whiskey and a Map, and it's on all the major channels, and also on YouTube. My YouTube channel is called Adventure Video Channel, and people can follow me on my website, which is com. You can see the photographs that I've taken, some writings, some videos that I've taken. I encourage people to check it out and see what crazy things I've done. And
Yeah, I
hopefully
will
they
put all
enjoy
the
it.
links also in the description so people can find them down there on YouTube or at Spotify.
Oh,
And
thank you.
that you talk to people about adventures, you share your own travel stories and everything, right?
Yeah, I kind of stylize myself as one of the old-fashioned adventure journalists, folks that would just go out into the wilderness, into far-off places, and just come back and tell the stories and bring back what they observed. I think that's pretty much what I try and do.
Good. You already know what your next adventure is?
Yeah, it's Morocco,
Oh yeah,
and
you
I'm
mentioned
working with
Morocco,
some
yeah, of
guides.
course. Everything, the mountains.
Yeah, it should be pretty cool. I've been working with a guide to set up an itinerary. We're going to go in really off the beaten path into some areas that should be pretty interesting. Get to see actually the country away from the tourists, the cultures that are there. I'm really looking forward to it.
Wow. Okay. I just wish you good luck with this and hope that you return so you can tell the stories.
Yeah, I hope we return too.
So thank you for this and good luck with Morocco and anything else that you're doing.
It's been a pleasure. This is a great podcast, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.